In a quiet rural town where most lives unfolded far from public attention, a widow's suffering had slowly become a grim routine that few questioned anymore. She lived on the edge of the community, raising her children alone after her husband's death, struggling to protect what little stability she had left. Almost every day, powerful local figures targeted her with cruelty that went far beyond words. She was insulted in public, threatened in private, and at times physically beaten, all because she refused to surrender her land and her dignity. People knew what was happening, yet silence ruled. Fear, loyalty to influential families, and the belief that a widow had no one to defend her kept neighbors from stepping in. Over time, her pain became background noise, something the town learned to ignore. Despite the abuse, she did not leave. Walking away would have meant losing the land her late husband had worked for and abandoning the last proof that her family had ever mattered there. Each morning, she carried on as if nothing had happened, tending to her responsibilities, shielding her children from the worst truths, and hoping the next day might be quieter than the last. Local authorities received complaints more than once, but nothing ever moved forward. Files were delayed, reports went missing, and promises of investigation faded without explanation. To many, it seemed clear that justice was not designed for someone in her position. Then came the announcement that stopped the town cold. Without rumors, without public courtship, and without any visible connection beforehand, a wealthy rancher declared that he was marrying the widow. The man was known far beyond the town's borders, respected and feared for his influence, his business reach, and his refusal to involve himself in local drama. His name carried weight in political offices, financial circles, and law enforcement agencies alike. The idea that he would choose a woman who had been publicly humiliated and socially isolated made no sense to anyone watching from the outside. Speculation exploded instantly. Some claimed he felt pity for her situation. Others whispered that the marriage was a publicity move or a strange attempt at charity. A few went further, suggesting there must be something wrong with the widow, questioning her motives instead of acknowledging her suffering. But none of the explanations truly fit. The rancher was not known for emotional decisions, nor did he act without purpose. Those who had done business with him described him as careful, strategic, and always several steps ahead of everyone else. As the news spread, reactions shifted from shock to unease. The same people who once laughed at the widow or looked away from her pain suddenly grew quiet. They realized this was not a simple story of rescue or romance. Something had changed, and it had changed fast. The widow herself said very little, offering no public statement beyond confirming the marriage. Her silence only deepened the mystery. Behind closed doors, those closest to the rancher hinted that the decision had been made long before the public ever heard about it. This marriage, they suggested, was not driven by impulse or sympathy. It was the opening move in a plan that no one in the town had seen coming. The impact of the marriage was immediate and impossible to ignore. Almost overnight, the atmosphere around the widow changed. The men who once harassed her stopped appearing near her home. Public insults disappeared, threats went silent, and the casual cruelty that had defined her daily life vanished as if it had never existed. People who had previously treated her as invisible now avoided her altogether. The reason was clear to everyone: she was no longer standing alone. By becoming the wife of the richest rancher in the region, she had stepped into a position of protection that no one dared challenge openly. Yet as the town adjusted to this sudden shift, quiet conversations began to circulate. Those familiar with the rancher's past decisions knew he was not a man who acted on emotion or impulse. He had built his empire by reading situations others overlooked and moving precisely when the timing was right. Sources close to his business circle revealed that his interest in the widow had begun long before the abuse became public knowledge. He had been tracking a larger issue tied to land acquisitions, illegal pressure tactics, and coordinated intimidation aimed at small landowners who stood in the way of a major development route. The widow's property was not just a modest piece of land inherited from her late husband. It was strategically located, forming a critical connection between multiple parcels that powerful investors wanted to control. When she refused to sell, pressure followed. What started as legal threats escalated into personal harassment and violence, all designed to break her resistance. The rancher uncovered evidence that local officials were deliberately ignoring her complaints, either bribed or intimidated into silence. Every closed case and lost report pointed to a system designed to exhaust her until she gave up. By marrying her, the rancher created an immediate legal and social barrier. Any further attack on her would attract national attention and provoke serious consequences. More importantly, the marriage granted him direct standing in the ongoing land dispute. He could now demand transparency, reopen stalled investigations, and apply pressure at levels far beyond the reach of those who had tormented her. What appeared to the public as an unexpected union was, in reality, a strategic move that shifted the balance of power in a single announcement. Behind the scenes, teams of lawyers began reviewing old complaints and medical records. Financial audits were quietly ordered. Witnesses who had once refused to speak were contacted again, this time with assurances of protection. The widow, once dismissed as a powerless figure, suddenly became central to a case that exposed years of organized abuse. Her role changed from target to key witness, and that transformation unsettled many who had believed they were untouchable. Still, the marriage was not without personal cost. The widow faced intense scrutiny, judgment, and speculation about her intentions. Some accused her of using the rancher for security, while others questioned whether the relationship was real at all. But those closest to her noted a subtle change in her demeanor. For the first time in years, she walked without fear, spoke without hesitation, and made decisions without looking over her shoulder. The protection was real, but so was her resolve. What had begun as a calculated alliance was setting the stage for consequences that the town's most powerful figures had never prepared for. The consequences unfolded faster than anyone in the town had anticipated. What began as whispered rumors soon turned into official inquiries, and then into full-scale investigations. Authorities from outside the region stepped in, reviewing years of ignored complaints, medical reports, and property disputes connected to the widow's case. Patterns emerged that could no longer be denied. The same names appeared repeatedly, linked to intimidation, illegal land pressure, and coordinated violence against vulnerable landowners. The men who once believed themselves protected by influence and fear now found that shield stripped away. As the legal process moved forward, witnesses who had stayed silent for years began to speak. Shopkeepers, neighbors, former workers, and even low-level officials came forward, confirming what many had long suspected but were too afraid to say. Their testimonies painted a clear picture of systematic abuse designed to force compliance. The widow's daily suffering was no longer seen as an isolated tragedy, but as part of a wider network of corruption that thrived on silence. Court proceedings followed, and arrests were made, sending shockwaves through the community. Public perception shifted dramatically. The widow, once viewed with pity or suspicion, was now recognized as a woman who had endured extraordinary hardship without surrendering her rights. Her calm presence during hearings and her refusal to exaggerate or seek revenge earned widespread respect. She spoke only when necessary, relying on facts rather than emotion, allowing the truth to carry its own weight. For many watching, her strength became the most powerful testimony of all. The rancher's role also came under close scrutiny, but instead of criticism, it brought acknowledgement. It became clear that he had not acted to dominate or control the situation, but to dismantle a system that had protected abusers for years. By using his influence strategically, he had forced accountability where none existed before. Analysts and commentators described the marriage as an unconventional but effective intervention, one that exposed how power could be used to protect rather than exploit. Over time, what began as a calculated alliance evolved into something deeper. Shared challenges, mutual respect, and a common goal created a bond neither had anticipated. The widow was no longer surviving day to day, she was planning for the future. Her children returned to school without fear. Her land was secured legally, and her voice carried weight in decisions that once excluded her entirely. The rancher, long seen as distant and untouchable, found purpose beyond profit, earning trust not through wealth, but through action. By the end, the town itself was changed. The story served as a warning to those who believed power guaranteed immunity and as a reminder that silence is often the strongest weapon of injustice. The marriage that once shocked everyone became a symbol of resistance, intelligence, and timing. It proved that even deeply rooted abuse can be dismantled when courage meets strategy, and that sometimes, justice arrives in the most unexpected form.